this episode of the Cardigan Society. We're happy you're here.
And we hope you're ready to listen.
Because it's all happening.
This month we're going to highlight the topic of poetry in honor of...
Poetry Month.
Yes, it's a big deal.
April, you know, I want to ask you, when you hear the word poetry, what do you think of? What does it mean to you? How do you feel?
I happen to love it. Maybe it's something I picked up in like my high school English class because everybody had to do a little segment on poetry in there. But as far back as I can remember, I've been really hooked on it.
Do you remember what your first poetry book was? Or what your favorite was in high school?
The poetry books that I have at home, I have...
You're like, I bought these for a reason.
I bought these for, like, I love poetry written by musicians. So
nice.
I have Jim Morrison from The Doors. I have poems written by, you know, different musicians and stuff like that. I like the dark stuff.
I like the stuff that's different from me. So, like, I have a lot of, like, Lang Leaves poetry. She's Asian American. She's a poet. But she writes a lot of, like, lovey-dovey, deep, I'm a female, hear me roar kind of stuff, and it's really good. I like that stuff.
Good. Everybody's got their own thing, so
for sure.
I love poetry as a creative outlet. Poems for your passionate feelings or descriptive things like poems about trees, that kind of stuff. You know, it helps the reader understand the full meaning and the intent of the author.
Definitely.
Any writing sample can be used to do that, but most poetry, people recognize it for its lyrical quality, for its rhyming, and for the flow that it has. And that's one of the things that I appreciate about poetry, is that it's generally very fluid. It's like anyone can read a poem, but not everyone can sing a song.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you said you imagine them to be much like songs. Do you like lyrical poetry more so?
I would say, who doesn't love a good limerick, right?
So. Okay, well, I mean, if a pun can count, then I'm in. I don't know. To me, poetry is like making an emotional connection with other humans. Like, hey, I don't know you, but like, here's how I think. You probably feel and think the same way, but we all have our mask on. We're all too afraid to say what we're actually feeling and thinking. Let me put it in a way that you're going to understand, or it's going to hit you in this way.
Because that's what
you're
going
to feel it.
You know, you really want to.
It's an emotional tie.
You want to draw an emotion out of the reader. You want them to feel something.
And even if it's not said directly, if you can spin it another way and still make them feel that emotion that you're trying to get from them, wow.
We should only be communicating by song.
Angie, how are you today?
I am just fine. Do you have the spreadsheet ready for me?
I don't know what spreadsheet you're talking about, but yes.
Okay. Poems everywhere. So,
again, not everyone can sing.
We could all read a rhyme. Poetry has always been regarded as a form of high art. Like countries and states, universities, they designate a poet every year, all these places, to elevate their status and show that that poetry is valuable.
Do you know when this first started? Like,
we're talking the 12th century. So, like 1300, the first poet laureate was ever named.
So you're picturing like Caesar and.
Well,
that's where
laureate comes from. The laurel crown that the ancient Greeks used to bestow upon.
So when people were out there proclaiming things, people were like, "Oh, this guy's got rhythm to him."
You know, philosophers, politicians,
Someone
emperors.
should write that down.
That's where the term laureate comes from the laurel wreath. So,
that's cool.
And this is something that people have done forever. It's just people have always created art.
Yeah.
You know, there's survival and there's functional and practical things, and then there are things for your soul. And
something to express yourself. Yes. Yeah. Make your mark on the world.
Yep.
Via verse. Okay, so does Indiana have like a poet laureate then, or?
They do. The poet laureate's appointed by the government or whatever conferring institution. The Indiana poet laureate is
Matthew Graham.
Matthew Graham. I actually haven't read anything by him.
No, I didn't. I honestly didn't know who he was. But that's funny. He was a professor, a literary professor for the arts at USI here in Indiana, which is funny because I almost went there. I didn't. Former professor of literature. So that's really cool. I didn't know he was that close to home.
Cool. So I think that I saw that they've named about half a dozen different poets in the state of Indiana as the laureate. It runs for a 2-year term, much like a congressman or something.
Yeah.
And then they'll pick someone else. So like our national poet laureate is Joy Harjo.
Okay.
And most recently in the news, Amanda Gorman is the National Youth Poetry.
Okay,
poet
so
laureate.
it's like age levels and then like regional.
However they want to
national.
designate it. So we've got the National Poet Laureate, then we've got the National Youth Poet Laureate, and
that's really cool.
she read her poem "The Hill We Climb" at the 2021 presidential inauguration.
Oh wow!
And it was powerful stuff. It was the poem is about unity at a time when the nation's fraught with division. So it was good stuff. So
good for her.
Yeah.
Huh.
So, you want to review a couple of books, and let's
see
go over what you've chosen and versus what I've chosen.
Let's see. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
You can go first.
Eeny, meeny, miny, tic-tac-toe. Okay. So Lin-Manuel Miranda is probably best known for creating the musical Hamilton, but he also wrote a book of poetry. Did not know this. Spoiler alert, hot take, I've never seen Hamilton. So I didn't know who he was. I just picked up the book. Whoops. Happy accident. But Good Night, Good Morning is the title. It's little pep talks for me and you by him. Short book best described by its prologue, which states, before he inspired the world with Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda was inspiring his Twitter followers with words of encouragement at the beginning and end of each day. He wrote these original sayings, aphorisms, and poetry for himself as much as others. So these are tweets. He's compiled them into a book.
Just tweets.
People just blow my mind. So on each 2-page spread of the book, the reader gets a good morning poem and a good night poem that are connected in theme. And they're meant to be little pick-me-ups for the reader kind of throughout their day each day. They wake up, read a poem, go to bed, read a poem. But I've prepared one of my favorites for you, if you don't mind.
Carry on.
I'll read you the good night and the good morning, just so you have a full day's worth. Good morning. Good morning. Let's make some new mistakes. Let's find the things worth saving in the mess our living makes. And here's the good night. Good night. Good night. Let's make some new mistakes. Let's stumble backwards, success, and pack some snacks for little breaks.
Oh, that's cute.
It's adorable. And there's like little verses. He's reminded himself that he's changed the pronouns so that they can be applied to his audience, which is incredibly humanizing for all of his fans. The book also contains little illustrations for each spread done by Johnny's son, and they are very well done and nostalgic for me. They honestly remind me of Shel Silverstein.
Oh, the line drawings?
Yes, they're so good. I greatly appreciate the visual touch that provides. I felt like a bit of a child reading through this book, not only for the illustrations though, but also because of the lightheartedness of Lin's words. This book is not a deep well of reflection for the reader, but rather a splash of a wake-up call to enjoy your day and end on a high note.
I love this one because, when you were reading the good night part, I immediately thought of like Blue's Clues or
good night. Good night.
Little Disney Channel stuff there.
Yeah, kind of what is it? Big Blue's Big Couch or Big Comfy Couch? Something like that. It's a child's show, but they do the whole good night, good morning.
Big Comfy Couch. She was a clown.
Yes.
Yeah, that was great.
They did the whole good night, good morning bit, and that was really good. Overall, I would give this book a 5 out of 10 cardigans, not at all because it was bad, but because it's not my type of poetry. If we were rating this book on readability and the feeling it will give the reader, it's a solid 9 out of 10. Solid 9 out of 10.
Okay. So,
You want to do any of yours? Break it up.
I have books in the library, books that we grabbed at the last minute because this one's actually by Halsey. This was great. One of my own, which is Emily Dickinson. I love Well, I could sit here and talk all day about the people, the writers and the creators and artists that I love. Edgar Allan Poe will be forever in my heart because I'm from the Baltimore area.
I think from the time you are in middle school to early high school, they just start installing Poe. And they're just like, you are going to love Poe.
Like, his writing is so, it's just so good. People might not like appreciate the technical aspect of it,
right?
But as far as I'm concerned, it is such a perfect. Everything he writes is so perfect for the time. That bleak sort of.
But you get in that age range of where everything has that bleak outlook, or like, so what?
Which
it
is
doesn't
something
matter.
I think, like something teenagers
like
go through.
Yeah.
The whole teenage angst and everything's so awful.
Yeah. So the teachers are like, "Hey, man, we see you. Here's some Poe.
A little bit of Poe. Throw that in there.
Some Poe poetry for your Poe soul."
Sylvia Plath, Emily Dickinson. I like the dark stuff. I've been
reeling out.
Well, I read a lot of sort of dark poetry and dark feminist poetry.
Yeah.
Definitely something that I can get behind. But I don't want to read any of that because that's sort of like on a personal level. But I Could Pee on This, which is a book of poetry, a collection of poems by cats.
Of course.
So poetry can.
I love that type of art because you don't have to be yourself. You can be a cat. You can write a poem as a cat.
There's a famous author who has written multiple books from his dog's perspective, and I get such a being a dog person. I love it. So I'm gonna run through really quick from I Could Pee on This, a book of poems by cats. The poem "Some of My Best Friends Are Dogs." Some of my best friends are dogs. We talk about dog things. Some of my cat friends don't get it. We laugh at their fear. The dogs see me as one of their own. True, they don't like it when I bark, or play dead, or chew their toys, or sniff their butts. But we're cool. Some of my best friends are dogs. I just thought you should know. So, who can argue that a poem about cats and dogs is not funny and entertaining?
And adorable.
Love that. It's adorable, adorable.
The visual image that it paints for you.
So,
chef's kiss, 10 out of 10.
I wrote a poem yesterday.
Oh.
A descriptive poem, not a lyrical poem, but a descriptive one, and I posted it on my Facebook. And it's a nice little thing. I'm sitting there on a quiet Sunday afternoon, and I'm enjoying the view from my front porch, and I just sat there and wrote something so that people can understand what I see when I sit on my porch.
Yeah,
you know, that feeling I have, just like that peaceful,
wholesome,
wholesome.
welcome home.
Absolutely. So,
yeah, magical.
You know, I write poems still all the time, even when I don't mean to.
Yeah, and I think that's another cool thing about poetry is that it doesn't have to be a 50-page essay. It can be a short sentence. It can be just long one-liners.
You can have like a 40-page epic poem or a 3-liner.
It's
like
whatever you want. It can be
haiku.
one line. I mean, you can pop open a fortune cookie, boom, there's your poem.
There's your poem.
You
can use just about anything to springboard a poem.
Yeah, and just like art argues, it's, you know, it could be modeled after life, or life could be modeled after art. Poetry is just as such. I think that's really cool.
Look at us being all
one pinky to the wind.
Basically, poetry is awesome. All forms of art are awesome.
Thebomb.com.
Thebomb.com. See, that's a rhyme. We're all poets on the inside.
Probably.
No. Yep. We're having a good time.
You want to do your other one?
Do what?
Do you read another one?
Do it. Oh, I don't know. Oh, well, look. All-time favorite poem.
Yeah, give it to me.
Read it the first time when I was in high school.
Okay.
And I have mostly had this poem committed to memory ever since high school, which has been a long time. I felt a funeral in my brain. and mourners to and fro, kept treading, till it seemed that sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service, like a drum, kept beating, till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul. With those same boots of lead, again the space began to toll. As all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, and I and silence some strange race wrecked solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down, and hit a world at every crash, and got through knowing it then. So, Emily Dickinson, one of the most highly regarded writers and poets ever, writes a poem about what it would be like to be conscious during your own funeral.
Oof.
Yeah, and this was written a long time ago, so the words are a little dated, and it's not exactly fully rhyming, but
But that's the beauty of poetry. It doesn't have to.
I just always found that one to be very personal. Something written by a woman in that time to be speaking about subject matter so dark and bleak.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't.
But I think that's so humanistic. Like, what human hasn't thought or contemplated death at some point in their life?
At some point. Everyone has
thought that, if I died right now, who would come to my funeral? Everyone's had that thought.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just, she's being real.
Right.
Good for her. Especially in, those times.
And she didn't write only, horrible, crippling depression sort of kind of things, but, she wrote about nature, and she wrote about love, and everyone else in the whole world can do the same thing. I mean, it's not like we have to.
It's a little bit of life.
This is life, you know, and I have just such a big appreciation for it. And her and Poe.
Her and Poe.
Yeah.
I'm gonna read some Mo.
They're my ancient parents.
If you can pick two people to be your ancient parents, who?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. The other book of poetry that I read was Swimming Lessons by Lily Reinhart.
Mm-hmm.
So, just so we know where I'm starting out with what I know about Miss Reinhart, because that's the mindset that I enter with. I know she's an actress. I know she's best known for dating Cole Sprouse. I know...
From Zack and Cody?
Yes, from Zack and Cody. I know when I initially heard about this book, it had very controversial reviews, which just made me want to read it more. A lot of the reviews I read stated that they didn't care for this book in such a way that it felt like they were biased only because of her fame and completely discounted the work itself, which, again, love a good controversy. So I was naturally intrigued by it. However, it brought to mind the question of how much does a person need to live in order to say they have lived a life? Because so many of these critics were bashing her for quote-unquote trying to be relatable and felt like her struggles were still that of a privileged life of a white female, which to me feels ironic because I would dare to bet that most of her readers are also her fans. So that becomes a very 21st century problem of we like to help to propel you into fame, watch your shows about your book, but you're still too famous to actually be a real human being with feelings.
Well, that's garbage because we know for a fact that every artist who has done this and suffered and struggled...
It's still a human.
They're all humans. Kurt Cobain.
It just felt disgusting.
Yeah.
It felt very biased. I didn't like it.
I don't think they're giving her a fair chance because of her age.
No. Because of her age, status, her skin color, it all felt very...
Yeah, well...
Yeah. But I felt secondhand offense just going through what they had to say about the book. But with all that being said, before I go any further, I think I should note that I would give this book 7 out of 10 cardigans.
Well, there you go. So for this one, I'm going to call solid 8 out of 10. This one, 10 out of 10, because everybody can use a laugh. This one I didn't find so great, no offense to Lana Del Rey, but Halsey beat her out hands down as far as musical poetry from musicians goes, and then now and forever, Poe and Emily are my people.
Yeah.
So that wraps up our discussion of poetry. We will never pretend to be experts on the technical aspect of anything poetry. We just happen to like it, and in honor of National Poetry Month, we thought we'd give you a little delve into the kind of stuff that we read. What else we got going on? What's going on at the library?
Oh my gosh. Don't get me started. We have a lot.
Yeah.
So in May, Tuesday Night Book Club will meet on May 11th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Be sure to check out our event calendar to get their monthly read.
Gotcha.
There you go.
Oh, speaking of clubs, Hillary has a book club called Book It.
Book It.
That is for ages 16 and up, and on Facebook they will be meeting the fourth Tuesday of every month online to discuss a fiction or young adult novel and share some health tips. Have a little chat.
Virtual Spilling Ink will be held on the 22nd of May, where they will discuss how to write funny. So if you have a knack for making others laugh, be sure to check out this program and put those skills to use.
Do you want to start a garden but have limited space? Join us virtually on YouTube or on our Facebook page on May the 3rd to discuss ailments to this common issue and learn about vertical gardening.
So all of this information and more can be found on our Facebook page. If you follow us at Jackson County Public Library or visit our website at www.myjclibrary.org. Keep checking our Facebook pages and website for the latest information. And just another subtle reminder that we are open to the public right now for grab-and-go service, so come in and see what's new.
Masks are still required. Thank you for joining us, and stay cozy, readers.
We hope you tune in next time. We're humans.
Jingle, jingle, jingle.
All the way.
Da 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 da. Wait, what are you still doing here? Go home.
Skip.